D. Mace Finnegan and Donick 1025 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, David Janes back in the saddle with us after a couple of days off. Willie Donick out today.
Yeah.
Is there anything more satisfying, Derek Mason,
Yes.
than a well-timed I told you so?
There's nothing better. There's nothing better. I told you so.
So
But it could be bad too. Like, man, I told you so. And now we're in a bad predicament.
let me set the scene for you. This morning, my wife and I are helping our son get ready for school.
Mhm.
And my wife drives Arlo to school on her way to work.
Mhm.
And Arlo likes to take a toy in the car because he needs something to occupy his time in the backseat. So recently we bought Arlo this Hot Wheels sized Lightning McQueen from the movie Cars. Ka-chow. And we haven't been able to find it these past few days. And
Mhm.
Arlo is looking for it. He's getting upset because he wants to bring the little Lightning McQueen in the car. And I said to Bridget, I think it might be in your car. And she dismisses that out of hand. It's not my car.
Oh.
So Arlo picks another toy. He's fine. Kiss him goodbye. Kiss the wife goodbye. Have a good day. I'll pick you up after school, bud. Close the door, lock it, go upstairs to get ready for the show. About a minute later, I hear the door open. And my 3-year-old shouts from downstairs, Dada, we found the little Lightning McQueen. And I shout downstairs, great, buddy, where'd you find it? In Mama's car. And I just said, huh. That's all I said.
Mhm.
Huh.
Did she hear you?
Oh, she heard me.
And she hears you now, I'm sure.
I may pay for this later, but I feel great right now. There is nothing better than a
Oh,
well-timed I told you
man.
so.
There's nothing wrong with that. You're right. But in some certain situations, you just wish you didn't have to say, I told you so. But
Right.
this was one of those situations where harmless,
Well earned.
well earned. Yeah. And I'm sure, Arlo probably found it.
Probably.
I'm sure he probably found
It
it.
was probably in the cup holder of his car seat.
Yeah. See, this is what, and tell me if I'm wrong. Guys out there, tell me if I'm wrong. This is where it would be totally different with a guy. If that toy was found in our car after our spouse or our partner told us it's probably in your car, and we said, no, it's not. You know what we doing when we find that? We ain't telling you where we found it. we ain't telling you that we found it in our car like you said. We're not doing it. We say, yeah, we found it. Where did you find it?
It was somewhere in the house.
It was somewhere. It was around. We said real quickly as we're leaving.
But she knows.
Yeah, she would have probably found out. Yeah, because Arlo would have said, yeah, Mom, did Dad tell you we found the car? Yeah, Daddy told us. Where did you find it? Oh, we found it in Dada's car.
All I could respond was, huh. As in, huh, that's interesting. I thought it wasn't in your car.
Oh, man. So what you're telling me is your day started off great.
Yes.
What? See, I was about to tell him, watch how you answer that.
Who's to say how it will go from here? But I feel great
Probably
right now.
Exactly.
I feel great right now.
Probably downhill.
What Texter says, that would be a great segment. I told you so, presented by Busy Bee. Hey, Busy Bee,
Hey, there
if you
we go.
want another sponsored segment, we are happy to have you. As you may have heard roughly 50 or 60 times over the previous 2 hours, Chase McCabe on vacation walked in here. The chair was still spinning because of how quickly Chase jumped out of the chair into his vacation. So it feels like when your teacher is out for a week.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ian is the substitute teacher in this scenario, but there are no rules.
None whatsoever.
None. Well, the FCC.
Yeah.
They still
They do regulate
still
what
have
we
the
can,
rules.
what we can do and what we can't do. So
Joey from Gallatin says, got to take the small wins in the marriage. She magically won't remember next time, but you will never forget.
Exactly.
Henry says, Adam, in marriage, you can either be happy or you can be right.
Yeah, one of the two.
So I'm riding high right now, guys.
As of now, as we're speaking.
Check in with me around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
Just send out an X or tweet. Hey, Adam, how you doing?
Update. Wife didn't cook me dinner tonight, only for her and Arlo. And she is an outstanding cook, so that would make me sad. But nevertheless, I am riding high. And today is really the first day of the NHL's dead period. We will have Elliot Freeman on at 1 o'clock, our final conversation with Elliot for the season before he, like many Canadians, head to the cottage for the next couple of months. A well-deserved break for Elliot Freeman. And he will join us for the final time this season at 1 o'clock as we break down Predators free agency, NHL free agency, and all of those things. But first day of free agency, come and gone. An underwhelming day of free agency, not just for the Predators. They made one signing, Nick Perbix, the defenseman from the Tampa Bay Lightning. But around the league, just an underwhelming day of free agency. But July 2nd, that's when the NHL flips into off-season mode. And you know what? We will hold that because Bob is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com. David says, Bob on Adam calling out his wife. So why don't we hear from Bob first? Bob, go ahead.
Hey, Adam, how are you today?
I'm doing well right now.
Well, question, do you have a really nice couch at home?
You know, it's well worn. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's going to be warm more now because you proved your wife's wrong, but then you also broadcast it for everyone to hear. It's been 15 minutes annihilating her. So you better have a nice couch.
I will make the best of the situation, Bob. Thank you for
man.
calling. I do have a nice guest bed if I do have to sleep there, which sometimes I end up in because my son, as I mentioned the other day, takes over the bed and kicks me out of bed. But nevertheless, so the NHL, July 2nd, is when it really flips into off-season mode. And there could still be moves made over the next few months, even over the next few days. But the Predators roster we have before us is more than likely going to be the Predators roster that comes to training camp in September and takes the ice on opening night in October. The NHL schedule isn't out right now, but we know that the opening night will be in October because it always is. So how do these post-free agency Predators stack up? I put together my projected lineup. I know Robbie Stanley did this exercise. Jared Stillman did this exercise. I talked to Robbie Stanley this morning. We sort of compared lineups. And I'm just going to go through these lines and defense pairs. And then I'm going to give you how I'm feeling about these Predators. And Derek, please chime in as well.
Okay.
So on the top line, I have Philip Forsberg with Ryan O'Reilly and Jonathan Marchessault. So from left to right on the top line, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Marchessault. No surprise there. Second line, I have Steven Stamkos, Fedor Svechkov, and Luke Evangelista. Evangelista, by the way, still needs a new contract. That will get done. He's a restricted free agent. On the third line, I have Michael Bunting, Eric Haula, and either Matthew Wood or Joakim Kemmel on the right wing on the third line. So a young right winger. Fourth line, Cole Smith, Michael McCarron, and Zachary LaRue. So again, left to right from first line to fourth line.
Cole Smith.
So first line, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Marchessault. Second line, Stamkos, Svechkov, Evangelista. Third line, Bunting, Haula, and either Matthew Wood or Joakim Kemmel or insert young right winger here. Fourth line, Cole Smith, Michael McCarron, and Zachary LaRue. Those are my forward lines, my projected Predators forward lines as of now for opening night. And I got to tell you, Derek,
it's not looking good for you.
It's looking bleak, man. Barry Trotz talked about the center depth for this team yesterday. This is and I am not, and I will not hesitate to say this. This has to be the worst center lineup in the National Hockey League.
Wow.
Ryan O'Reilly, a reliable player.
And you got him on the first line,
I
right?
do.
Okay.
By default.
Yeah, because Stamkos played center last year. He's not going to play center this year.
Right. So I have Ryan O'Reilly on the top line. And look, Ryan O'Reilly, you can count on him in every situation. But we knew a couple of years ago when they signed him that, hey, by year 3, he'll probably be moving down the lineup. Wrong. He's still playing top line center in my eyes. And as much as I admire Ryan O'Reilly in his game, I don't think Ryan O'Reilly is a first line center in the NHL at this point. Then you have Fedor Svechkov, who led all Predators rookies last season with a grand total of 17 points in 50-plus games. Now, Barry Trotz did say yesterday, Derek, that he does want to leave spots open for young players, and I do think that's important. So, Fedor Svechkov, I would rather him be playing second-line center than Erik Haula at this point. And Barry Trotz does not want Steven Stamkos to be playing center on a regular basis. So, Svechkov it is.
Mm-hmm.
Erik Haula comes back, had a terrible season last season. As a third-line center, he's fine. I think that's kind of where he is at this point of his career. And Michael McCarron, we know, can center the fourth line. But from top to bottom, yikes. And even Barry Trotz admitted yesterday that the defense and the wingers are going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. But as we know, center is an incredibly important position. And from first line to fourth line, I am confident in saying, without having looked at every other projected lineup in the NHL, I am confident in saying that the Predators' projected center depth in my lineup is the worst center depth in the National Hockey League entering this coming season.
Wow. I can't too much, disagree with you. Excuse me. I'm sorry about that. But what more can he do?
There really isn't
because
much he can do.
You look at free agency and, before it even started, all the big name guys re-signed or, signed with teams before things re-signed with their teams before free agency even gets started. And then once you get in free agency, there's nobody worth paying the money to that is going to, cure this problem that you have, at least not for the long term. I'm not sure why they didn't it goes back to last year. Why did they, and was there a center, in last year's free agency that they could have counted on? Because they went away from the center position, so much so that Stamkos had to end up playing the center position during the season. So if this is a problem, that you've had for a while, and it has been, why didn't you address it last year? Why did you go so heavy with wingers and not address it with a centerman?
Off the top of my head,
at least one of the guys.
Right. Off the top of my head, there weren't many great centers on the market. And look.
But somebody better than what you have now outside of Stamkos, and he was just playing it by default.
It's a good question because, as we discuss in other sports, players in premium positions, good players in premium positions, rarely enter free agency because the teams that have those players are not dumb enough to let them go. So you are sort of picking off the scrap heap, more or less, when it comes to finding centers in free agency, for the most part. As we discussed yesterday, when the market opened, the best available center on the market was Mikael Granlund.
Yeah.
And Mikael Granlund, who signed a 3-year deal with a $7 million cap hit with the Anaheim Ducks. What was that?
Oh, it happens from time to time. I don't know where it comes from. I'm sure it comes from their.
It was one of those construction blasting things.
But it happens every so often.
It still scares me every time.
I thought that was God reacting to Mikael Granlund's contract. Like, they gave him what?
Huh?
But Mikael Granlund may not even play center for the Anaheim Ducks. He may be a winger. So, they probably couldn't have gotten that much better at center in free agency this summer or even last summer. there were some centers available,
Mhm.
but they went with 2 wingers and a defenseman last summer. So, I mean, it's going to require Barry Trotz to get creative,
Mhm.
and teams are not going to be giving them away. So it'll be interesting to see how they proceed, but at least Trotz, I think yesterday during his news conference, I heard
Mhm.
Robbie Stanley play part of it this morning. Alex Daugherty of the Tennessean was asking Barry Trotz about it and listed the centers. He goes, at center, you have Ryan O'Reilly and Svechkov and Holla and McCarron, and those are the players that come to mind. And Trotz quipped, those are the players we've got. Like he acknowledges that the center position on this team is going to be a weakness.
Mhm.
And that in turn hampers the wingers because you want Steven Stamkos to score more goals at 5-on-5. Well, is Fedor Svechkov going to help him do that? I don't know the answer to that. Steven Stamkos, used to playing with elite players like Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov. Comes to Nashville and he's
Mhm.
centering a line, or he's playing with Tommy Novak or Fedor Svechkov. It's
Okay.
been a step down. So
What about and listen, I'm not tr- trying to sit here and say I know a lot about these players. But I'm just looking at centers in last year's free agency. And how about a guy like he went from
Sean Monahan.
Monahan, excuse me. I had it on the tip of
Yes,
my tongue.
Sean Monahan, he's a good player,
Mhm.
but and would he be the second line center on this team? Absolutely.
Mhm.
Um,
So why not push for a guy instead of getting those 3 guys? And we talked about this. Instead of going get all 3 of them, why do you get 2 and then get you a guy like Sean Monahan who plays the center position?
it's a question that if the Predators can't solve their center issues, it's a question that we'll continue to ask. The Predators are hoping that Brady Martin will solve that problem one day.
Yeah.
Personally, I would advise against putting Brady Martin on the team this coming season, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, I'm looking at the forwards here. Again, this is my projected lineup for the Predators based on where things stack up post July 1st.
Mhm.
From left to right, first line to fourth line. And you let me know, 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. You let me know how you feel about these lines. Forsberg, O'Reilly, Marchessault, Stamkos, Svechkov, Evangelista, Bunting, Holla, either Wood or Kemmel or young right winger of some kind, Smith, McCarron, and LaRue. That is not a playoff team. That is a team that could be slightly better than the team that stunk up the joint this past season. So I'm not bullish on these Predators. 615-737-1025. What do you think of my forward lines? Projected forward lines now that free agency, the first day of free agency has come and gone. Coming up next, we'll look into the defense because this is the portion of the lineup that Barry Trotz prioritized this offseason with the acquisition of Nick Hague and the signing of Nick Perbix. But we will get into that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Your thoughts on my projected lineup for the Nashville Predators. We'll also talk more NHL and Predators with Elliot Freeman. Our final conversation of the season with Elliot coming up at 1 o'clock. But before we do that, this week's Nashville's best deal is Tzatziki's. Craving something fresh and flavorful? Tzatziki's has you covered from juicy chicken kebabs to perfectly grilled salmon. Every bite is bursting with Mediterranean goodness, and don't even get us started on the homemade sauces and dressing. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at thegamenashville.com/deals. Tune in to ESPN 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Nashville Sounds take on Memphis. Pregame begins at 6:20 and the first pitch is at 6:35. Coverage is also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds Baseball on ESPN 94.9 The Fan is presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, reacting to how the post-free agency Predators stack up. And spoiler alert, not so good. So I just ran through my projected forward lines from top to bottom, 1 to 4, left to right. Forsberg, O'Reilly, Marchessault, Stamkos, Svechkov, Evangelista, Bunting, Haula. I have either Matthew Wood or Joakim Kemmel on the right side of the third line. Cole Smith, Michael McCarron, and Zachary Leroux on the fourth line. So one texter reacts and says, top 5 draft pick again. Woohoo! And I mean, I'm not discounting that possibility that the Predators could be back where they were this past season. I don't think this season is going to go as poorly as last season did, because everything that could go wrong did for the Predators in 2024, 2025. And I'm expecting a bounce back, but not a significant one, especially when looking at these line combinations. So let's go over the defense, Derek, because the Predators, they prioritized defense, especially over these past few days, starting with the trade over the weekend, acquiring Nick Hague from the Vegas Golden Knights for Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon. And then they signed Nick Perbix from the Tampa Bay Lightning to a 2-year contract with a $2.75 million cap hit per season. So here are my projected defense pairs based on what we heard from Barry Trotz yesterday. Top pair, and I don't love it, Nick Hague on the left and Roman Josi on the right. Second pair, Brady Shea.
But doesn't that put Roman Josi back where
it puts him on his off? It puts him on his offhand. He does have experience playing there. Trotz has mentioned to Jared that Josi may be playing on his offhand. And frankly, as I was trying to put together this defensive lineup, the only way it made sense to me, based on the things that Trotz has said, is by moving Josi to the right. So I have Hague on the top pair with Josi on his offhand on the right side. My second pair is Brady Shea on the left with Nick Perbix on the right. My third pair is Tanner Molendyk on the left and Justin Barron on the right. And of course, you see Saros in goal. So Hague and Josi, Shea and Perbix, Molendyk and Barron. So my initial reaction to the Vegas Golden Knights Nashville Predators trade from a few days ago was less about the trade itself and more about the contract that Nick Hague received. A 4-year contract with a $5.5 million cap hit. So I've referenced, Derek, this website I like to use called AFP Analytics, and it is a website that specializes in NHL contract projections. They nailed it with Nick Perbix. They predicted that Perbix would receive a 2-year contract with a cap hit of roughly $2.6 million. He received a 2-year contract with a cap hit of $2.75 million. So they pretty much nailed it. AFP Analytics predicted that Nick Hague would receive the same contract as Nick Perbix. They predicted a 2-year contract with a $2.6 million cap hit. The Predators gave him 4 years at $5.5 million per season. A gross overpayment. Multiple meanings of the word gross in that scenario. A gross overpayment for Nick Hague. But Trotz said yesterday that he expects Hague to play higher in the lineup. He thinks he was undervalued in Vegas because Vegas has a deep defense. And quite frankly, if you're paying him $5.5 million, he better be playing in the top 4. So who knows if he can do it. He has shown an ability to play up the lineup at times. Same with Nick Perbix. But the Predators took much more of a risk in signing Hague to that contract than signing Nick Perbix to a 2-year deal.
Okay. I'm channeling again my inner Willie Donick here.
All right. Coach Willie?
Yeah, Coach Willie. This contract, as it starts to age, he's 26, 27 years old.
I know you were going there.
This contract, as it starts to age, and if he continues to develop like Barry believe he will, this will end up not being a bad contract. And let's just say, even if he's not, say, on the, because right now you got him on the first pairing, right? With the defenseman, he and Yossi, right?
I have Haig with Yossi.
Yep. So even if, say, if it's not working out with Yossi, you can put him down another line and it enhances that other line. Wouldn't you think? Because he has he's shown to be a good player. Now, was it because of who he was playing with alongside, or was it because of his ability and he starts to develop?
Here's the thing about Nick Hague, and Nick Perbix can also be lumped into this as well. Hague specifically was playing on the defense in Vegas that has 3 excellent defensemen: Noah Hannafin, Shea Theodore, and Alex Pietrangelo, although Pietrangelo's career is likely over because of injuries. But he had to play lower in the lineup because Vegas has an embarrassment of riches on defense, or at least they did, not so much anymore. As I mentioned the other day, it's similar to when Seth Jones was here, before the Predators traded Seth Jones for Ryan Johansson. Seth Jones was a third pairing defenseman for the Predators because on the top pair, you had Roman Yossi and Shea Weber.
Yes.
And on the second pair, you had Matthias Ekholm and Ryan Ellis. So there really wasn't anywhere else for Seth Jones to go. And Seth Jones has proven over the years that he is capable of playing a bigger role. Let me respond to your Coach Willieism with, I saw this from friend of the station, Greg Wyshynski of ESPN. He was writing about the Columbus Blue Jackets and their GM, Don Waddell. So Don Waddell held a news conference, I think, before the draft, just like Barry Trotz did, just like every GM did, just like every GM does, I should say. So let me read the tweet from Greg. Quote, Don Waddell, at Blue Jackets NHL GM and salary cap hardliner. Quote from Waddell, I've been educated, with educated in quotation marks. I've been educated by every agent I talked to. Just because the player was worth $3 million last year doesn't mean he's now worth $4 million because the cap went up.
I get that. I understand it.
So I hear what you're saying, that perhaps the going rate for a quote unquote third pairing defenseman like Nick Hague will be $5.5 million because of the rising salary cap. But at the same time, just because of that doesn't mean you have to pay him $5.5 million.
Well, again, the Predators are in a position where, even though they went out and they splurged last year, they are almost in a position, it's like this year, they have to do something. They have to prove to this fan base that Barry Trotz is the guy, that Coach Bruno is the guy to coach this team. So when you go out and you make a deal like this, you may say, well, Nick Hague, he's not in the big, he's worth a little bit more. But when you are a team that is trying to make up for what you didn't accomplish last year, sometimes you may have to pay a little bit extra to get that person on your team. And you just hope that, not even hope, you anticipate that your scouting was good enough that contract, you're not worried about the contract moving forward, that you've done enough scouting of this individual, you've watched him enough, you saw the development, that you believe that this is not going to be a problem moving forward, the contract.
So one thing that the Predators absolutely accomplished in trading for Nick Hague and signing Nick Perbix is they've gotten bigger on defense. Nick Hague, this is not an exaggeration, is one of the biggest defensemen in the NHL. He is 6'6" and 245 pounds.
They need one of those guys, man.
Perbix is 6'4" and 206 pounds. So the Predators' defense core, their projected defense core, they're pretty big. Yossi, 6'1", 201. I just mentioned Hague and Perbix. Justin Barron, 6'2", 198. Brady Shea, 6'3", 210. Last season, they relied a lot out of necessity on Nick Blankenburg, and Nick Blankenburg was a great story last season. He's also 5'9" and 177 pounds.
Yeah, it's not going to last too long.
I don't know off the top of my head how tall Tanner Molendyk is. He is 5'11", 190. So he's on the cusp. So the defense got bigger. Theoretically, the defense got a bit nastier with Nick Hague, who sort of replaces Jeremy Lauzon as that wrecking ball on the back end. But the Predators are taking a risk here, specifically with Hague, signing him to that contract, that he can play a regular top 4 shift, because he's done it at times in Vegas, but that wasn't his primary responsibility. He was a third pairing defenseman who, if need be, was pushed up the lineup. So he can do it. The question is he capable of being, in my eyes, based on this projected lineup, a top pairing defenseman every single night? I don't know the answer to that. With Perbix, the contract is not. The contract is absolutely reasonable, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You can probably find someone to take Nick Perbix off your hands if it doesn't work out in a year. Good luck trying to get someone to take Nick Hague off your hands if it doesn't work. So there is absolutely risk involved with Hague at that contract. And I'll be curious to know when we talk to Elliot at 1 o'clock, like what the market was for Nick Hague, because the Golden Knights needed to clear cap space to bring in Mitch Marner, where the Predators in competition with several other teams to bring in Nick Hague, and this is what they had to do to cross the finish line. So I'll be curious to hear what Elliot Freeman says about that. But what are your thoughts on my defensive lineup? Hague and Yossi, Shea and Perbix, Molendyk and Barron, and my lineup as a whole. Forsberg, O'Reilly, Marchessault, Stamkos, Svechkov, Evangelista, Bunting, Haula, Wood/Kemmel, Smith, McCarron, LaRue, Hague and Yossi, Shea and Perbix, Molendyk and Barron, and Saros. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Also, programming note, we're not on Friday, obviously, because it's the 4th of July, and Derek is taking a well-deserved day off tomorrow, an extra long weekend for Derek Mason. So we're going to have a special Wednesday edition of Ask D-Mace at 12:30. So if you have questions for Derek, you can get them in now on our text line at 615-737-1025. But because no show on Friday, no Derek tomorrow, we will have a special Wednesday edition of Ask D-Mace at 12:30. Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow will join us at noon. But we will take your reaction to my post-free agency Predators lineup coming up next. 615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. This September, Tim McGraw will be performing at Trintix's Rock the Cradle in Nashville, a meaningful event supporting newborns and moms at Ascension St. Thomas Midtown. Get your tickets now at rockthecradlenashville.org. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, David James here with you. Willie Donick out today. Want your thoughts on my projected post-free agency Predators lineup? 615-737-1025. I'll run through it again quickly. Forsberg, O'Reilly, Marchessault. Stamkos, Svechkov, Evangelista. Bunting, Haula, either Matthew Wood or Joakim Kemmel. Smith, McCarron, LaRue. Hagen, Yossi, Shea and Perbix, Molendyke and Barron, and Saros and Net. I'm going to tell you right now, Derek Mason, as I've said already a couple of times.
That doesn't scare you?
Not a playoff team. On paper, I think you're looking at a cellar dweller. I don't think it's going to be as bad as it was last season. And when I say that, it's because I don't think the Predators were as bad or are as bad as they were last season. As I said, everything that could go wrong did. So I do think they're going to get a bump in the standings because I do think some things are going to work themselves out. But even then, like, I'm looking at a team that may miss the playoffs by more than 10 points. Like, looking at this lineup right now. Again, I will say it unequivocally. I would challenge anybody listening to find a projected center lineup worse than the one that the Predators are going to be putting on the ice, according to me, right now on opening night. O'Reilly, Svechkov, Haula, and McCarron. I challenge you, and I would love to see if you can do it, but I don't think you can. I mean, The Athletic had a story a couple of weeks ago. They did a series where they ranked each team by position. Predators, number 32 out of 32. And that was before free agency and the draft. The question that you asked me, Derek, and I think we may get into this a little bit tomorrow. By the way, Connor Newt will be filling in for you tomorrow. It's going to be Take Your Son to Work Day when Connor Newt sits in on DVD because he's about 13 years old. But looking forward to having Connor Newt on the program tomorrow. I don't love the idea of Brady Martin being on this team next season. I think that puts too much pressure on the kid to perform right away, especially when you remember the reaction to that pick. And because we don't know a lot about Brady Martin as a player, I think there are going to be Predators fans who think, hey, if he's not on the second line and he's not producing right away, bust. What a terrible pick. Like, I think it would be in Martin's best interest. Maybe he gets a few games with the Predators, but I don't think he should be a factor on this team this season. Let's get to some reaction. We have plenty of it. One texter says, if the Predators are out of the playoffs come trade deadline, don't you think they'll trade off Stamkos, etc., and that will cause a plummet in the final 20 games to a top 5 pick? Well, Steven Stamkos, among others, have no movement clauses in their contracts. So it's up to, let me just double check.
Not for the duration of the contract.
Steven Stamkos has a full no movement clause through the duration of his contract, which means that if the Predators want to trade Steven Stamkos,
he has to agree to.
He has to do it. Now, if the team continues to stink, he may be like, hey, man, I want out of here. I didn't sign up for this. So that's possible. But there aren't a lot of tradable pieces among the veterans because they have either a no movement clause or a modified no trade clause, what have you. Mike in Lebanon says, the difference between the Titans and the Preds is that when the Preds lose, Bridgestone Arena is still a fun place to hang out. Well, you're right about that, Mike in Lebanon. Bridgestone Arena is still a great place to go, even when the Predators stink. Let's go to Ricky on our phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com. Ricky, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys, how are you? I just wanted to add a little bit to the Brady Martin. First of all, I was at the draft party, and the reaction this poor kid got was kind of awful. I've watched Brady play extensively. Probably for the last year, I've probably seen him play about 30 games. And when I tell you he is going to be a Smashville favorite next season, he belongs nowhere near the NHL ice this season. But this kid's going to come in here and be Jordan Tutu popular. He hits everything that moves. He's a farm boy. He lives the country lifestyle. There's an old expression in hockey, take the shortest route and arrive in ill humor. That's his definition. This kid is going to be very popular. Let him mature a year in the minors. Let him get his legs under him to the bigger, faster game. And I think he's going to be a huge standout in Nashville.
Thank you for the call, Ricky. And that's sort of my point, Derek, that as he mentioned at the top, the reaction at the draft party at Bridgestone Arena, I've heard it was confused by the Brady Martin pick. I don't want to go as far as to say that the Predators would be setting up Brady Martin to fail if he starts the season as the second line center on this team. I think that's extreme, but I just think that it would be best for him to take another year in junior and make sure that he's absolutely ready versus forcing him into this lineup. Because you asked me, you're like, if Brady Martin's on this team, where are you putting him? I said, I might put him at second line center by default, maybe third line center. But I don't see Brady Martin, as the caller said, I don't see Brady Martin as a player who's coming in right now and making an immediate impact. So I think it would be unwise to put too much pressure on him right away.
Yeah, I can understand that. But I mean, listen, maybe, the Predators, and I'm not going to even say the Predators, maybe those that the talking heads, those that are in the know, they talked about two individuals. Who was it?
Porter Martone and James Hagan.
And James Hagan. They talked so much about those two individuals, and the Predators are picking high. So when you do draft a guy like Martin, you don't have a caller like that. This guy, our caller knew a lot about Martin. Typically, the average fan is not going to know as much about that third and fourth guy than they maybe do about the top guy or even the second guy. Why? Because those are the guys that are always in the forefront. Those are the guys that we're talking about. We're not talking about Martin as much or at all until really like the last couple of days of before the draft hit. So when you're not talking about someone and then all of a sudden he gets drafted, the fan base, it's not like football or basketball or even baseball where you've been watching these individuals. Like you can actually see them. So when you go to the third guy, we can say, oh, okay, I see why they got that guy. That guy can play for him. When you go to a guy like Martin, even though he's a hell of a player, he's shown he is a young guy, you don't know as much about him as a Predator fan. So now you're confused like, well, I thought we were taking these two other guys. Now you're getting a guy that we hadn't even really thought about.
One texter says, Joel from Woodbury. And Joel, this is a question that I'm going to ask Elliot Freeman when he joins us at 1 o'clock. He goes, I have a theory on the Nick Hague contract. Was listening to Frank Saravalli this morning, another NHL insider. Mm-hmm. He said Tanner Jeannot got $3.4 million from Boston per season because he had 13 offers at the trade deadline last year. Nick Hague was a wanted guy. So in my opinion, Barry gave Hague what he had to. And I'm going to ask Elliot about that because if Elliot tells us that, hey, a lot of teams knew that the Golden Knights were going to have to shed salary, and Nick Hague, he had 10 teams that were calling about him. And the Predators stepped up and they increased their contract offer, gave the Golden Knights a little bit more than maybe they intended. I'm not going to say that excuses the contract, but it would at least help me understand how they paid him $5.5 million over 4 years. One texter says about the defense, those big guys will help, meaning Hague and Perbix. Again, you had a 6'6", 245-pounder and a 6'4", 206-pounder on the blue line. One texter says, were there any other defensemen that were better and deserved the money? I assume he means Hague. Yeah. Now, in terms of players who were available via free agency, no. Aaron Ekblad I don't think was ever leaving Florida, and he took a hometown discount to stay in Florida. I don't think he was going to take that contract from any other team. But I look at the other, defensemen on the market. Dmitry Orlov, Brent Burns, who's I think 40 years old. There were some defensemen who were signed yesterday who also received bad contracts, as that typically happens in free agency. So it's a good question. My issue again with the Nick Hague contract is I just don't think he has shown that he is worth that contract. Now, I know that you've probably heard this in your field as well, Derek, mm-hmm. that you're paying for the contributions you're hoping to get
Mhm.
versus paying for past performance. But I don't see a lot in Nick Hague's past that makes me suspect that he's going to play up to a $5.5 million contract, at least not yet. The Predators are banking that he plays higher in the lineup. They hired Luke Richardson as an assistant coach, a former NHL head coach who played more than 1,400 games at defense in the NHL. They are hoping that combination can unlock something in Nick Hague that the Vegas Golden Knights didn't. And I will leave myself open to that possibility. But again, the contract, I'm still kind of, this may be extreme. I'm still kind of nauseated by it. It's just not a good deal.
And the remedy to that is the season. So you're going to be nauseous for a good while until we get going in the season. Listen, the contract, and you were right, Adam. A lot of contracts are, at least the second contracts are, paying guys on, at least for football. The signing bonus to me is for the things you have done. We recognize that you were either an elite player or you were that, good player or whatnot. So we're going to pay you a signing bonus based on that. The contract moving forward is based on what we believe you will either maintain or will become. So when I look at Hague, I would say the first 2 years are probably, in a sense, it could be too much money. The first 2 years for me is like a signing bonus. Or let's say the first year is like a signing bonus for things that you have already done. You've shown us that you can play. So that first year is your signing bonus. Anything after that, or if you want to take the 2 years, anything after those first 2 years is what we expect you to do moving forward. And hopefully for us, it works out to be a good contract, meaning your production is matching or even exceeding, exceeding the pay that we're giving you.
615-737-1025. Let me know what you think of my projected Predators lineup. I don't love it. It may be another long year in Smashville, folks. 615-737-1025. We'll put a pin on that for now. Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow will join us coming up next. Always look forward to our conversations with Hutton, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D. Mace Fingan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Willie Donick out today. A quick Predators note for you Mark Del Gaizo fans out there. He signed with the Montreal Canadiens, so if any of you actually own Mark Del Gaizo jerseys, you may have to put them in storage because he's no longer a member of the organization. Now, let's move on to more pressing matters. Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow joining us on the program. Hutton, have you been following this Malik Beasley story?
Do we get Hut?
Where'd Hutton go?
I'm here. You guys got me?
Yep, there you
there
are.
we
Hi,
go.
Hutton.
Okay. Yeah, no, I haven't, but let me know. I'm curious about this.
So Malik Beasley, NBA player
Yep.
for the Detroit Pistons. Federal authorities are investigating him on allegations of gambling related to NBA games and prop bets. This reported by Shams Charania. The allegations are from the 2023-2024 season when he played for the Bucks. At least one prominent U.S. sportsbook detected unusually heavy betting interest on Beasley's statistics beginning around January 2024, a gambling industry source told ESPN. But the details of this story are just astounding. The Detroit News had a scoop recently. Ex-Pistons player Malik Beasley's money problems ran so deep, he pledged his current and future NBA contracts as collateral in one deal and stiffed his dentist. And that dentist is garnishing his wages.
What? So his salary is going to
In a $34,390 default judgment against Beasley, according to court records, the dentist started garnishing Beasley's paychecks from the Pistons in February.
That is crazy. Now, if that's okay, the dentist isn't the only one that's garnishing him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, wow.
He also
This is a 30 for 30.
Yes. In January, a celebrity barbershop with a long roster of NBA stars won a $26,827 judgment against Beasley. So the larger point here,
I mean, it's
Hutton,
sad, but I'm laughing.
right. The larger picture here, Hutton, is the prevalence of sports betting and the fact that these leagues have gotten into bed with all of these sports betting companies. I
Yep.
mean, it allows for this to happen. So it's like we shouldn't be surprised by this, right? I know we're sort of chuckling at the fact that this man, this NBA player, is having his wages garnished by his dentist. It's a sad story, but I mean, this is what was inevitable, wasn't it?
Yes, but it was already happening. I mean, in the NBA, I mean, we know about the referees,
Mhm.
right? Like they have the background there where, I mean, they're going full out ban for life whenever you're caught doing this. So, it's a stark difference. Look at it from the NFL's perspective. Calvin Ridley is, breaking the rule there, and he's suspended basically for a year. It's indefinite, but he comes back after a year. The players do. When's the last time that's happened, by the way, in the league?
In the NFL specifically?
In the NFL, yeah.
The last time that it
The last suspension for breaking the
Wasn't it Nicholas Petit Frere?
yeah, it was Nicholas.
it feels like forever ago.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a full
And
season, right? It was
So am I to
6
believe that all of a
games?
sudden the players stop? I mean, they're off the apps now. Come on, like it's very selective, and a superstar quarterback will never be caught doing it. By the way, and look how close we were to in Major League Baseball with Ohtani. That close,
That's true. I
that
forgot
close.
about that.
and that would have been, I mean, that would have been catastrophic for Major League Baseball. Instead, you get the interpreter who's now in federal prison in Carolina or Virginia, I believe. Nonetheless, or West Virginia. Nonetheless, guys, I mean, it seems like we bounce around to the different leagues, but you've got the one common thread with it is it's been going on, but the billions of dollars they have coming in now, Adam, as you just mentioned, that's the difference. And I don't know if it's as much about being, what's the word? like being transparent with this as much as it is appearing to be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That the sports books want to absolutely look like they're on the up and up. And I'm not saying that they're automatically doing anything criminal here, but the players, whenever I was growing up, there was a bookie down the street at the golf course. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't hard to go place a bet. And some of these guys are doing it at such a high level that they're caught in this little, this game. Beasley's not the only one.
By the way, here's some more information from ESPN.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
this has been going on for a while.
A gambling industry source pointed to a game between the Bucks and the Trailblazers on January 31st, 2024. The odds on Beasley recording fewer than 2.5 rebounds moved significantly at sportsbooks before the game, shortening from around plus 120 to around minus 250 due to a surge of action on the under. Beasley finished with 6 rebounds in the bets that were deemed unusual.
There you
lost.
go. So, okay. So keep in mind, it's about the other wagers you can make on a sports bet, right? The side bets. That's where the players and the refs really can, flip a game or a wager. We saw it at Alabama with baseball. So there's so many different things. I always think about the spread. Mm-hmm. It's not as much about the spread. It's about like over under minutes played, rebounds, assists, whatever. Because the player could just say, I'm sick all of a sudden, I'm cramping up. And they're out of the game after they get 1 rebound, offensive rebound, and then over under 2.5.
Isn't that what happened to the player that the NBA banned? Didn't it?
Yes.
Yes. The NBA banned a player from the league for this. Jontay Porter. Yeah.
Real
quick. In the Jontay Porter thing, that was like the one of the starters was out. He knew he was going to play. He had an over under, and I may get the detail the bet wrong here, but it was like over under on rebounds or minutes played. And he got into the game, knew he was going to play, got into the game, and then like faked an injury, and so he was out of the game. So once he was in the game, that wager stuck for and it hit the under. That was just one example. But we're hearing it right now with Beasley with the rebounds and stuff. Like it's crazy to think. I don't look at it that way. Is what I'm saying, guys. I look at it as the spread. 3.5, 4 points, and it's the the devil's in the details, Mace.
One thing that you also have to keep in mind wasn't Adam Silver the first major U.S. sports commissioner to advocate for legalizing sports betting?
Yeah, and everybody else followed suit.
Right.
Well, so I'm not against that though.
Neither am I.
But
you're sort of inviting this sort of behavior.
You're in bed with you, and I'm not saying you, because I think a lot of people believe like, hey, listen, it's betting, and they don't have really too much to say about it in regards to that. But in regards to sports betting and these leagues being in bed with these sports entities. But when you put individuals in situations like this, whether they are endorsing these betting sites or whatnot, because if I'm endorsing it, I'm getting money somehow from them to endorse. They make it easy for you to bet. I'm sure, but players can't bet. Players can't.
I don't see the players endorsing it though, Mace. They're not allowed to.
Yeah, you're right. They're not allowed to.
Yeah, and that's also unfair. Like at the Super Bowl in Las Vegas.
But the teams, I meant the teams get to promote.
Oh, yeah.
And they're in bed with them. Yes.
No, the owners are benefiting. They're getting a ton, man. But again, I think it's more about appearing to be like they're really care. They really care about making sure that everything's going proper. And I'm not trying to say that they're doing it intentionally, but they're never going to suspend LeBron James for placing a wager.
Oh, because LeBron's never going to place a wager. I don't know about that. He would be dumb to place a wager on anything, considering what he would have to lose.
Oh, but Jordan would have.
There was a different era because Jordan knew that more than likely ain't nobody going to find out about this unless you were following me around.
But I'm saying like that, but they would have made. I mean, David Stern, who knows? But they would have never suspended Michael Jordan or banned him for life. We would never have that headline of Jordan is doing something where it's intentionally undermining the sanctity of everyone placing their wager on the Bulls. Like I'm not trying to accuse him of anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. I'm saying like in the NFL, for instance, Patrick Mahomes is never going to get caught, even if he did something on BetMGM.
Yeah, they're not
know,
going to allow it. They're
Right,
not.
it would be it's the backup offensive lineman who gets suspended for a year.
Exactly.
That's what I mean.
No, and you're right, because I look at it, and I've looked at all of the sort of betting suspensions over the last 5
Right.
years, and it runs the gamut. It's not just predominantly one sport or the other. I think baseball has had their issues within the last 5 years. Basketball, football, definitely. Hockey has had theirs. Golf has had
Yeah.
theirs. So every sport tends to have their, whether it be one guy or girl or multiple people, because it's so easily accessible, meaning betting.
And-
you don't have to do much to actually get a bet in.
Isn't it interesting too? I'm thinking about this as you say that.
Mhm.
You mentioned all the sports. We, as a public, as fans, we view it different. It's different for us based on the sport.
Mhm.
In Major League Baseball, it's Pete Rose, but in the NFL, it's 12 months.
Mhm.
Isn't that interesting?
Mhm.
Like it's not the demand for he's done. In the NBA, because we've had the what was the referee's name?
Tim Donaghy.
Donahue.
Donnie. Yeah, thank
Tim
you.
Donaghy.
Yes, but because of that, they're like zeroed in on it. There's another ban for life deal. I just think it's fascinating how one league handles it versus the other.
Yeah, because football, I don't think, and I could be wrong about this, at least not within the last 5 years, I don't think it may have been one indefinite suspension, but to like just say you're suspended forever, like you're never ever getting back
like
in.
the ban.
Yeah,
like
just
you're banned from baseball.
yeah,
or
you're
banned from-
right.
yeah.
I haven't seen that
No.
in football, at least.
No, and again, like Ridley was suspended indefinitely on the commissioner's list or whatever, but it was like a 12-month deal. It's like February to February. So again, it's kind of like unsaid. I'm fascinated by how we you know what I mean by saying we, like
Yes.
as a public,
Mhm.
we tend to look at the sport different, and one's like very stat numbers driven, the other's not. But you can control it if you're going to catch a pass or not in a game. And again, I'm just using Ridley because it happened in Atlanta.
Mhm.
But I'm not saying he did that.
I'm
In fact, he was out. He was out those games, I believe, on IR or something. But again, like you know who's going to play, who's not. It's very interesting, and the refs can also do that. Here's a holding call and a big first down play.
Well, in Nicholas' case, I think because he was on NFL grounds.
That was what happened with Jamison Williams.
That's
When
right.
Jamison
Jamison
Williams
Williams,
was
yeah,
suspended. He
Yes,
placed a
that's
bet.
right.
He placed a bet on a non-NFL game
Exactly.
from an NFL facility,
Yes.
which includes not just the building, but also the plane
Yeah.
and the hotel.
That's right.
And the bus. Like, it just seems like
The parking lot.
Yes.
it's like that.
If you hit the Wi-Fi, you're on team grounds.
And to me, that seems a little extreme, to say
I
the
agree.
least. But, I'm reading this story from The Athletic that was published in January of 2024, asking if it says gambling suspensions for pro athletes are on the rise. Is this the tip of the iceberg? And in 2023 alone, 11 different athletes, 10 NFLers, and 1 NHL player were punished by their leagues for gambling-related infractions. But again, like with the Jamison Williams thing, it's just like he bets on a sport that's not the NFL, and he does it
Right.
like sitting in his car. I don't know if this is what he was doing, but like just for the case of this,
Right.
sitting in
Yeah.
his car before he pulls out of the facility, like that should
On
like to
team
me-
grounds.
I know, but that seems so silly though.
But the NFL,
I agree with you.
It is silly, but it's almost this two-tier sort of discipline. If that's like you said, if that was Patrick Mahomes, nah, they
No,
would have
man.
they would have found some way to say no, he didn't do it on the NFL grounds. But when you are a young guy like Jameis Williamson, then
Mhm.
if you're in a parking lot, not to say he was in the parking lot, but I'm just saying, if you're in the
Sure,
parking lot
yeah.
of the facility, then you've broke the rules.
Yep. Yeah,
that's the
you
way
just
it
hit the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Again, like if that was basically what happened. And I'm to believe that the rookie again. I wasn't the one saying this, but everyone was like, "Oh, the players are dumb. They need to read the policy." Well, so I'm to believe that the rookies coming into the league know this policy.
Of
course not.
No, They knew.
But I haven't heard of anything like this recently. I don't want to, because I mean, they're adults. They should be able to, if they want to bet on the hockey game, they should be able to do it like I can on FanDuel or DraftKings or whatever. Don't bet on your team. Don't bet on the league. I get all that, but it's team employees too. They are strict about it. Players that were going around Radio Row at the Super Bowl in Vegas, they were like they were very like it's like they were going to be suspended for life if they were caught with like a logo behind them. Like they were worried. If one guy sat down with us. One guy sat down with us and goes, "Are you presented by FanDuel or DraftKings?" I was like, "No." He goes, "Okay, good." I mean, I was like, "What?" That's how like paranoid they are about it. But yet the owners are getting billions in sponsorship money.
Of course.
By the way, Nicolas Petit-Frere was suspended for placing a non-NFL
yes,
bet.
that's what I thought
it was.
It wasn't. Yeah, he was in 6 games.
NFL game. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It would have been indefinite had he. It would have been for at least 1 year had he done something on the league.
I do want to ask you about something else, Hutton. So yesterday, Sophie Cunningham of the Indiana Fever, she made headlines when she expressed concerns about the markets that the WNBA is expanding into, specifically Cleveland and Detroit. She basically said, you want to listen to your players. Do they want to go to Cleveland and Detroit?
And before you say that.
And by the way, don't forget about the Detroit Shock, who won multiple NBA titles. But nevertheless, go ahead, Derek.
It ain't, listen, Sophie.
Famous,
it ain't
famous
like
Michigander.
It ain't like something like it's just Disney World in Indiana. What in the hell? How the hell is she gonna sit here and say, "Oh, nobody really outside of Caitlin Clark, nobody wants to play in Indianapolis"?
Well, you know what? She did say Nashville is an amazing city.
Yeah, this is like shut up, okay? Just be quiet. Because
here's why Nashville didn't get it. Here's why Nashville didn't get it. We don't have an NBA.
Yes,
market
that's
right
that, and that's what the NBA was saying.
Yes,
they said they wanted to give it to teams that has a NBA presence within the city. If the Grizzlies were here, I think Nashville would have got a team immediately.
But go ahead.
Can I say why they're doing it that way?
Yes.
They've been subsidizing and paying for the league as owners, right? They want a return on investment.
Exactly.
Because they've been losing money. Here's what they're doing. The entry fee for a franchise was $50 million 2 years ago. $50 million. Now it's $250 million. Now, think about what it's going to be when they can go back to the table in 2 years on their TV contract. The WNBA can. And they're going to sell these teams off. The owners will. If they don't want to own the team, they will sell these teams off. And they're going to make money off of it. It's just, it's more investment. You get the team now. You capitalize on Caitlin Clark. And then you sell whenever you have the opportunity to, when others want to buy in for more. $250 million right now. How much did the Predators sell for? To the ownership group, it's like 190 something million. That was what? That was 2007.
Yeah, nearly 20 years ago. I'll have to look that up.
Consider 2 years ago was $50 million to get in the league for WNBA. And by the way, that league's it's already, for me, I'm not trying to rip on any. It's hard to watch if I'm not watching Caitlin Clark or
193 million to buy the Predators.
There you go. And so it was 50 million just to get into the league for the Valkyrie. The Golden State Valkyrie. Now, now it's 250 million. That's the effect of why they're doing it. And they're doing it with the NBA owners, because the Pacers owner also owns the Fever. They're doing it for the NBA owners to they want to make sure the owners are happy. The owners do, because they've been paying for this league for so long. Listen, and they want to have a return on investment. They're like, what are we doing here?
These girls are going to play. Listen, because it's not like the sport is starting to catch traction. And
absolutely.
It's great. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, all of these women that can just straight out ball. Now they're picking up steam. We're not even talking about the girls that are in college that are going to eventually be playing in this league. So the league is just trying to put teams in situations where they believe they can thrive. If you got a Detroit Pistons, why not put Detroit, a WNBA team, back in that city?
But they're not doing it with owners, like the investors from the outside.
Exactly.
That's what I mean.
They're doing it with owners. They own either all of it or part of it. Meaning,
the NBA already owns 50% of the league, Mace.
Yeah,
the NBA owns. So they're just taking money that they're already giving them and
Mhm.
buying these franchises,
Mhm.
or starting these franchises is what I mean. And then they're going to sell them off eventually
Oh,
and
of
make
course.
tons of money off of it. Yeah.
Of course. And
Yeah.
because the game, I believe
Hey.
it's growing. How much it's going to grow, I have no idea.
I do
But like
wonder
you
if it hits
said,
a. I do wonder if I'm sorry, Derek. I do
Uh-huh.
wonder if it hits a saturation point because
Mm.
they're riding
Exactly.
they're riding the
Mhm.
Caitlin Clark wave right now. Sophie Cunningham's teammate, by the way,
Mhm.
they are riding the Caitlin Clark wave, and as Hutton said, the WNBA, the values of the franchises, the ratings, the television deal, they're never going to be higher, or at least you well,
I think
you would
they
hope
will.
you hope they will.
I think
You
they
hope
will because
But is there a fear of oversaturation? Like we're just going to keep growing and growing and growing, and but I think you have to be careful, right?
no, I think
And
they're going to
don't do it
grow.
too
Yeah,
fast.
I think they're going to grow to a point where they have close to what the NBA have as far as teams, period. But you got to look at the pipeline that is coming through our college. There are some
Right.
really good that can potentially be great players, female players that are going to transition to the WNBA. And everybody's waiting on Juju to see how she comes back after that knee injury that she had in the tournament. She comes back, she's going to headline that group that will be coming out, I think, in 2 years. She's going to be another addition, let alone the girls that are coming out next year. So I think this sport is going to continue to rise. But for Sophie Cunningham, sit your narrow tail down, okay? You talk about my city,
Narrow.
okay? You talk about, and that's the only reason I'm in a little bit of an uproar. It's because she's
Oh, it's
talking
fun.
about
I
my
agree with you,
city.
man.
Now
like
take up for Cleveland,
like
Derek.
Indiana has like, oh, it's just worlds of things to do in Indiana. Like, goodness gracious. Like, I'm not gonna take up for Cleveland, even though I like Cleveland, but that ain't my city. I'm taking up for my city, okay? First and foremost. So listen, I understand, I get it, but she should just be. I think the league, the WNBA, should be happy, not from the standpoint of we're giving you this, but from the standpoint of your sport is growing. So don't sit here and, well,
Right.
we need to have it in this. No, your sport is growing, and eventually, I believe, they may get a team here in Nashville.
I think it's an inevitability. I know it didn't work out this time around
Mhm.
for the group, but I do think I
It
think
will.
Nashville to the NBA.
I think
Nashville
they will.
be in the WNBA. At
The
some
names
point.
alone in the
Mhm.
ownership group will tell you. And I love the name, by the way, of the team, the Summit.
Yeah, I
It's
It's
really
great.
like that.
But again, Peyton Manning's involved. They're going to have a team.
Yes. Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow joining us as he does every week on D Mace, Vingan, and Don Nick. Hutton, great stuff as always. Have a wonderful July 4th weekend. We'll talk next week.
Yes. Happy Independence Day. Always enjoy the conversation, and you guys have a great weekend.
You as
You
well.
do the same.
Jonathan Hutton on the program, 615-737-1025. All right. As we just noted, July 4th, Friday. So no show. 3-day weekend. Derek is actually taking a 4-day weekend. He's getting out of here after the show today.
Oh, yeah.
So that means we are moving Ask D-Mace up from Friday at 12:30 to right now. 615-737-1025. A special Wednesday edition of Ask D-Mace. Call us, text us, 615-737-1025. Football, hockey, sports, life. It's all on the table for Derek Mason. A special Wednesday edition of Ask D-Mace. That's coming up next. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game.
He played 15 years in the NFL.
Quick throw. Touchdown, Derek Mason.
He had over 12,000 receiving yards.
Midfield, and there he goes. 80 yards for the touchdown.
And now you can ask him anything. Have a question about football or life? Now's your time to ask D-Mace.
We'll welcome you in.
Now, D-Mace. On 102.5 and 106.3, The Game and the Game Nashville app.
It is indeed time for Ask D-Mace. No, it's not Friday. It's Wednesday, but we're off on Friday because of the 4th of July holiday and Derek taking a well-deserved day off tomorrow. So I thought, what the heck? Let's have Ask D-Mace on Wednesday. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. So if you have questions for Derek, let her rip. And we've got plenty. And let's start with Luke on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Luke, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, D-Mace, just want to say thanks for taking as many hockey questions as you do and jumping into this stuff. It's great to have another ambassador for it, for the city.
Oh,
But
well, thank
my
you.
questions are going to be for Cam Ward. Do you think he goes over/under on passes, touchdown passes for interceptions? And do you think he goes over/under for 15 touchdown passes this year?
Thank you for the call, Luke.
Thank you for the call, Luke. What was the over/under for interceptions? He said
I didn't hear that. David,
Yeah.
did you?
he said 14, or he said 14 for touchdowns, right?
I'm going to look up his over-under.
Yeah. Based on our caller, I think over the 14 or 15. I'm not saying it's going to be grossly over. I hope it. I pray it does. I pray it is, or will be. But I do believe in the over. Now, when it comes to the interceptions, what do they have?
Okay, so this is according to Paul Gaharski back in April. So these lines certainly have changed. But according to BetOnline_AG, passing touchdowns over under 19.5, total interceptions over under 12.5.
I would say over the 19.5. I'm thinking between 19 and 23, maybe somewhere around there, 24 interceptions. If it's over the 12, we got a problem. We have a problem. I think it's at or below the 12.
Okay, let's go to Adam in Portland on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam, thanks for calling. Please go ahead.
What's up? Hey, D-May. So between Bruno, Callie, Borgonzi, and Trotz, who gets fired first and who is the last man standing keeping their job?
Thank you for the call, Adam. So between Brian Callahan, Andrew Burnett, Barry Trotz, and Mike Borgonzi, who gets fired first?
Okay.
And who is the last man standing?
Okay. Last man standing. Wow, this is a tough one.
It's a good question.
It is a good question. Is he saying the last man standing, meaning after this season? Or
Which
is
of
he
those
saying
four? Which of those four
will be fired first, and which will have the longest tenure?
Yes.
Okay, that's how I'm explaining it. I want to pick Borgonzi because the short term, because
he will be
just
the
got
last
the
man standing.
Yeah,
you mean?
in the short term.
Yes.
But I think in the long term, like you would pick Barry because of the history of the Nashville Predators.
Mhm.
And what do we talk about? Being loyal to a fault sometimes.
Yes.
And I just think that's the organization, period. And there's nothing wrong with that. But maybe they've held on a little bit too long to some players or coach or whatnot. Or some may even say the last GM. That's not me, but some were saying that. So if you're talking about the long haul, if we were just basing it on the long haul, then I think Barry. I would say Barry, then Borgonzi, and you flip a coin with
the
Bruno
coach
and
question is
Callie.
interesting because if I had to answer that question,
Well, I would put Bruno before Callie. You know why? Because NFL teams they really don't fire. They're not accustomed to firing, coaches in the middle of the season early on.
now it has recent history.
It has happened.
Recent
Yes.
history
Mhm.
has shown that I believe it was 5 of the past 7, if I
Mhm.
recall off the top of my head, 5 of the past 7 quarterbacks taken number 1 overall have had their coaches fired in season in their rookie years.
Mhm.
Now, Urban Meyer is in that group, and he's a special
Yes.
case, but it does happen. So if I had to answer that question, I would say if I had to answer Adam's question, if I had to choose between who gets fired first, Brunette or Callahan, I say it's Brunette.
Yes.
Because Brunette, we know that hockey coaches typically have short leashes, but then again, you can also put in the loyalty to a fault thing that you were talking about. But I think that the drafting of Cam Ward buys Brian Callahan a little bit more time, because I don't know if the organization wants to hamper his development by firing the head coach so early. So if I had to answer that question, I say Brunette is the first to go among that group. But just the 2 coaches, I think that Brunette has a shorter leash than Brian Callahan.
Yeah, I would tend to think, because if this thing starts off on 3 wheels for the Predators early in the season, yeah, we may be looking at someone else on that side.
Matthew in Nashville says, speaking of coaches on the hot seat, who are 3 coaches on your way too early hot seat watch for college football, and where do you put Billy Napier on that list?
Man, I haven't followed. Let me see offhand. Napier, you can't put him on a list. Look at what he did last season. He was on a list last year, wasn't he?
I think he is perennially on the
list. Yeah, he was on the list last year, and then he got his team to play. Is he on the list again this year? At the top of the list?
I'll have to look that up. I don't know.
I would say Michigan's head coach. He may be he may be at the top of the list, considering what their team. And listen, they've violated rules, and I think they got some scholarships taken away, or he's suspended for a few games, isn't he? Or was that last year?
Let me throw you some names out there. Sam Pittman in Arkansas. Hugh Freeze at Auburn.
How about LSU?
How about Brian Kelly? How about Lincoln Riley with USC?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Those are the ones that come to mind. Billy Napier, I would also include on that.
I'm gonna throw this out there, because I'm not sure if this person would be on the hot seat or not. But considering, I'm trying to buy a little time here because I'm looking up something else. But considering, who he followed and how they botched last season.
Are you about to say Kalen DeBoer?
Yes. And I was trying to look at some stuff from last season, but I get to it. But how even though they still had an opportunity to make it, that wasn't the Alabama team we were used to seeing. They played really no defense. The offense was suspect at times. It just didn't. And now they're ushering in a new quarterback. It just doesn't seem, or it didn't seem last season that we were watching, Alabama team that was continuing to ascend. It seemed like a team that had stalled out or either was going a little bit down.
A couple of texters have said that Napier's fine. Justin and Hopkinsville says Napier's fine. They ended up doing well last year in DJ.
That's what I was thinking.
And is it DJ Langway?
Yeah, DJ Langway. He's coming back as the quarterback. So why would he be on a hot seat unless I would see the year after that if they don't build on what they did last year? There's a possibility.
One texter mentions Brent Venables at Oklahoma. So to be honest with you guys, I haven't thought too much about college football hot seats. So I'm going to have to rewire my brain to get ready for college football season, which I learned is 51 days away, according to Big Joe Dubin's daily countdown. By the way, Big Joe Dubin, I was catching strays on that show today.
Were you?
Yeah. Chase is on vacation. So in the style of David Letterman, Big Joe Dubin did a top 10 list of the things that Chase is not going to miss on vacation. And I think I was on the list 3 times. I'm like, am I that annoying? I don't think so.
How did you get on the list 3 times?
One of the ones was, I think it was number 9. The 44 texts you'll receive from Adam Vingan asking where the remote location is. First of all, that is a extreme exaggeration.
It's about 32.
It's 1 or 2. And it's not about the location. Like, I know where we're supposed to go. I just want to know,
wanna
like,
make sure.
where
Yeah.
within the location I'm
Yes.
supposed to go.
I
But
get it.
Chase, well-deserved vacation, my friend. 615-737-1025. We will continue to take your questions for Derek. A special Wednesday edition of Ask D-Mace. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D-Mace, Vingen, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingen, a special Wednesday edition of Ask D-Mace. No show Friday. Derek out tomorrow. Speaking of Michael Jackson, Andrew from Dover. D-Mace, what is the most underrated Michael Jackson song? My opinion is Blood on the Dance Floor. Andrew from Dover.
Man. The Girl Is Mine. I love that.
That's a good one.
I love that song.
That's a good one.
Oh, man. I love the song he did with Paul McCartney. He and Paul McCartney. I still remember. I remember as a little kid waking up early in the morning. I was in middle school at the time, wanting to see that video. It was on, was it MTV at the time?
Probably.
Or it was on one of these.
VH1? Was VH1 around at that time?
VH1. It was on one of these like video boxes. It was called Video Box, I think. And they would play it. What was the name of that? Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson. Say. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you want, but don't need me. I love that song. So The Girl Is Mine is, to me, underrated. And it's a short, because it's a short song. It's a very short song.
Josh,
I loved it.
Josh says Man in the Mirror. I wouldn't say that's underrated, though. That's a well-known
Man in the Mirror
song.
was...
May I tell you a funny Michael Jackson related story quickly? I know this is Ask D-Mace, so I have to make sure. Several years ago,
you asked me.
I know. I did ask you. I did ask you if I could do this. So thank you. A few years ago, I was in Las Vegas for a work trip. The Predators were out there playing the Golden Knights, and I brought my wife with me. My parents met us out there. We made a little bit of a weekend out of it in Las Vegas. And one night we went to see the Cirque du Soleil Michael Jackson show. And we got tickets to the late showing, which started like at 9 or 9:30.
You gotta love it, man. Go ahead.
So that was the day I flew in. So I was feeling a little bit jet lagged.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the show. It was a great show. But at one point I started nodding off, not because the show wasn't entertaining. It was highly entertaining. I was just exhausted. I nodded off and I woke up during the performance of Thriller. And a lot of the artists, the acrobats, whatever you call them, they started dancing in the aisle and they were dressed as zombies. So I'm nodding off and I wake up and there's someone doing the Thriller dance as a zombie right in front of me. And I jumped out of my seat. It was very jarring. One texter says PYT, which is a great song.
Yeah.
Another says Smooth Criminal.
Definitely.
I also shout out Alien Ant Farm, the remake of the cover of Smooth Criminal. I have a soft spot, Derek, for bands that their greatest hit is a cover of another artist's song.
If they sing it right.
Right. Well, Alien Ant Farm was this like punk / hard rock band that came out 20, 25 years ago, and they covered Smooth Criminal, and that was their biggest ever hit. So they're like, I'm trying to think of some other ones. The rock band, the Ataris, their number one hit was a cover of what song was that? Boys of Summer, right? So I have a soft spot. Soft spot for that. All right, let's get back to some other questions. Let's see. Stephanie says, D-Mace, if you could undo any Titans trade, which one would it be and why?
Oh, man.
I think I know what the most popular answer would be.
The Derrick Henry.
No,
he was a
that wasn't
agent.
a trade.
The Steve McNair, probably.
What about AJ Brown?
Yeah, the AJ Brown too. I think in more recent years, I think the Steve thing was because of how it happened. And subsequently what happened after that, Vince Young having such a short career, and it had to do, and a lot of it really didn't have to do with his ability to play the game. It just didn't seem as if he was invested the way he needed to be invested, at least from the outside. But yeah, in most recent history, I think it would be hands down the AJ Brown trade. Because you had a guy that had proven that he was an ascending talent, and you didn't, for whatever reason, maybe it became a little personal, but the organization chose to move on, trade him to a team that ultimately ended up winning the Super Bowl with him as a part of that team and him being a big part outside of obviously Saquon Barkley. But yeah, that's one fans are going to look back at. And if this team doesn't turn it around pretty soon, they're going to continue to look at that trade and say, man, what were y'all thinking?
Coy in Clarksville. Derek, would you agree with the following statement? Derek Mason was a top 5 wide receiver of the 2000s era.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Who else would
Look
you
at
put
the
on
number.
that list?
Look at the numbers.
Pick 4 others.
Let me see. 2000, Randy Moss.
Okay.
Let me see. I would say Marvin Harrison. He got drafted 2 years before me.
I would put Marvin Harrison on that list. He
put,
qualifies.
Yeah. At least for that 10-year span.
Yeah.
Like 2010.
Yeah.
In between 2000 and 2010. Yeah. Marvin Harrison. Randy Moss.
T.O.
Yep.
Why am I forgetting now? St. Louis.
Torrey Holt.
Torrey Holt. Definitely Torrey Holt. Yep. There you go.
Here are some others that I thought of.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Randy Moss.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned Torrey Holt. We mentioned Terrell Owens. Hines Ward. Would Hines Ward be in the running?
Yeah, Hines Ward could be in the running.
You mentioned Marvin Harrison.
Uh-huh.
Chad Ochocinco / Johnson.
Yeah. He had a good team. He had a good run.
Did you say
man.
Reggie Wayne?
No, I didn't say Reggie. Reggie came like 2000. What was his? When did he get drafted? 2000. Because I'm on
2001, I think.
Yeah, 2001. You can put him on the list, but who would you take off there? I'm not taking off myself.
Isaac
I
Bruce?
just look at the numbers. Isaac Bruce was an older. I look at him. I think that 99 year, 2000, 2001, he had a good run, but it wasn't like a 10-year run into the 2000s.
Steve Smith?
Yeah, but Steve got drafted, 2004?
2003, 2004,
Yeah,
around that
yeah,
range.
right around that way. So, I mean, it's weird because we all sort of overlap. It's like a 3-4 year period, and then you add a guy like Steve Smith, or you add another one of these guys that were, at the top of their game. So, I mean, if you're just counting those guys that sort of ushered in the 2000s, like the guys that got drafted in 97, 96, 97, 98, and then on, I would tend to leave him off. Not because I don't think he, was that dude. I think he's a Hall of Famer, Steve Smith, I'm speaking of. But I just look at it based upon the numbers. That would be my 5.
Josh asks, what are you doing for the 4th, Derek? With you hitting them MJ notes, sounds like karaoke is in your future.
Man, not no karaoke. I don't know what we're gonna do.
You're going to New York?
Yeah, I'll be with my family in New York. So I don't know what we're gonna do in the 4th. I know we want to try, just like everybody else that loves fireworks, and my son loves them, as do I and my daughter.
I love them on one day a year.
Yeah, one day
as we discussed
their mom
yesterday.
Quite not as much, but we'll find a place to watch some fireworks. I'm sure there'll be a lot of, in each borough, you will have your own sort of fireworks going off.
Joey wants to know what your favorite cartoon was in the 1980s.
Ooh, oh man, He-Man, definitely. G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe.
Man.
And knowing is half the battle.
Man, I loved the Smurfs back then. You got to understand, I was a little kid back then. So I loved the Smurfs. I love Thundercats.
Mm-hmm.
And these people probably just like, Thundercats? What the hell is that? Thundercats. I already said He-Man. What else was out back then? Let me see.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I love even had the game. Love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Turtles in a half shell. Turtle power.
So, yeah. What are you playing? A video game?
Playing the Thundercats theme there.
I love Thundercats, man. That was just like
Voltron.
Voltron. You had. I'm saying.
Oh, yes.
Transformers or Voltron.
I was partial to Transformers.
I get
personally.
it. Transformers came out. When did Transformers debut?
Ooh, that's a good question.
It had to be what, mid 80s. I remember the movie. The movie when that came out, the cartoon movie. Oh my goodness. You couldn't try to you weren't keeping me away from the theater to watch that movie.
See, I'm a '90s kid. I was born in 1989, but I came of age.
And some of these cartoons sort of bled into the 90s.
Yes, I was more of a Nicktoons kid.
Yeah.
So anything and everything on Nickelodeon, Rugrats, Doug, Ren and Stimpy, Rocco's Modern Life, so on and so forth.
I love Scrooge McDuck though. I love what you call it. What was the DuckTales?
Oh,
DuckTales, DuckTales.
DuckTales.
I do love DuckTales.
I love DuckTales back in the day. I'm gonna tell you what I used to do when DuckTales would come on, because it usually came on. This is how it came out. I do believe at one point it was, and people correct me if I'm wrong, but then different cities and different states, they came on different times. So when I would get out of school, first I would go down, sometimes when I had money, which wasn't often, I would go down to the Dairy Queen. The Dairy Queen sold these little packages of now and laters. They were called Jingles. They were small, and they were 5 cents a piece.
Oh wow.
So I would get 5 in a pack. So I would go down and get a bag full of Jingles, go home, sit there
and watch DuckTales.
G.I. Joe, the Smurfs. And I hated when I was on punishment. Oh, I hated when I was on punishment because I couldn't watch those shows. But my sister and them would be watching them, and I can hear it.
Oh,
that was the worst.
You would hear muffled.
Oh, yeah.
Life is like a hurricane here in Duckburg. Race cars, lasers, aeroplanes. It's a Duckburg.
Yes.
And you'd be like, I can't watch.
I can't see it. So that was me.
Oh, man.
Yes. So those are my cartoons.
Oh, I'm sorry. Adam in Portland says it's Heroes in a Half Shell, not
Heroes
Turtles in a Half Shell.
Heroes in a Half Shell, Turtle Power.
She says, Adam, it's Heroes in a Half Shell, Turtle Power, not Turtles in a Half Shell, Turtle Power. My wife does the same thing. She will barely mess up words like that, and it drives me up a freaking ball. Why am I not surprised, Adam, to hear that? 615. We got a lot of people texting in their favorite cartoons. Maybe we'll get back into it in a little bit. 615-737, but 1025. But coming up next, the final time this NHL season, we will be joined by the one and only Elliot Freeman, Sportsnet NHL insider. We will break down NHL free agency, what the Predators did, all of those things with Elliot. Our final chat with Elliot until the fall. That's coming up next. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D. Mace Finnegan and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, pleased to be joined on our phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com, by Sportsnet, NHL Insider, Elliot Freeman, presented by Old National Bank. Get old. Elliot, thank you for your time. I know that you are. If you're not at your cottage already, I'm sure you're on your way for a well-deserved summer vacation. So we're glad we could have you on one more time before the season ends.
I should state for the record, Adam, that I don't own a cottage, so I'm not on my way there.
Fair enough, but you still deserve a well-deserved break for all that you do for us hockey fans during the course of the season. So let's start with this, Elliot. I was a bit underwhelmed by free agency day yesterday. I thought that with the cap going up and teams flush with more cap space, that they may spend more freely, as we have seen in the past. I'm wondering if it was just the underwhelming nature of the players available, especially after all of the top players like Mitch Marner and all of the Florida Panthers players re-signed, or maybe these teams are saving up their money for next free agency when there are a lot of really good players on the market. What was your read on why free agency seemed to be a little bit underwhelming yesterday?
Well, I think you hit on a lot of the reasons right there in your opening monologue there, Adam. I think a lot of what you said played factors. And number one is that the cap took its first big jump. It's going to take bigger jumps next year. Number two, next year's class, depending on what everyone decides to do, is a massive class. So I think we are going to see some of those guys sign well in advance. But I think number three, and this is not an insignificant thing, I think that even though this year it took a big jump, I'm not convinced there's a lot of teams that thought there were a lot of people out there who really deserved the kind of huge windfall that could potentially come with this. I think teams were really trying to be careful. There's still one more big deal that's going to get signed here, and that's with Nick Ehlers. But I think other than really Marner or some of the Florida guys who stayed, I think teams were saying, if we're going to blow our budgets, who here really deserves that, or who here really fits with that? And that's why I think you saw a lot of cautious plays yesterday.
So, Elliot, a few days ago, the Predators swing a trade with the Vegas Golden Knights, acquiring defenseman Nick Hague for Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon. Yep. The Predators then signed Nick Hague to a 4-year contract with a $5.5 million cap hit. And I'll admit, Elliot, when I saw those terms, my eyes bulged out of my head, figuratively, of course. I was shocked by that number. My question to you is, I know that Vegas had to maneuver their roster to make room for Mitch Marner. How much interest was there in Nick Hague? Because I'm wondering if the Predators may have had to go higher on the contract to ward off some other competitors for his services.
There was a lot. There was an awful lot. And, there were a lot of teams that knew that Nick Hague was going to be available. And because Vegas, Kelly McCrimmon talked a bit yesterday after they signed Marner, he told a bunch of guys they weren't getting traded. He told William Karlsson they weren't getting traded. He told Thomas Hertl he wasn't getting traded. He told, there was one more, I think. There was one more forward that he told was not getting traded. And so you look down your roster and you're suddenly saying, okay, well, somebody's got to get traded for this to work. Who's it going to be? And it came down to Nick Waugh and Nick Hague. And I'll say this, I think there was a lot of interest in Hague. And I think one of the things that happened was that he could have gone, Nick Hague could have gone to Calgary. Because the guy that Vegas really wanted was Rasmus Andersson, who was the Calgary Flame defenseman, the right-hand shot. But they couldn't work out a trade. And I think if Nick Hague had indicated he was willing to sign long-term in Calgary, then he would be there. I think it's possible there were other teams. I haven't confirmed this, Adam, but I've heard from other teams that it was indicated to them that Nick Hague probably wasn't going to sign there long term either. So I think in some ways it's a real feather in Nashville's cap that he was willing to do it, because he was a year away from unrestricted free agency and he had options. And I believe he indicated to some other places he would go there for a year, but no guarantees. But obviously that wasn't the case with Nashville. He was willing to sign long-term there.
The other move the Predators made in free agency, they signed Nick Perbix to a 2-year contract with a $2.75 million cap hit. Personally, Elliot, I like this signing. I like what Perbix brings to the table.
Too.
Our esteemed afternoon drive host, Jared Stillman, he was trying to poke holes in this yesterday. He goes, wait a minute. So you're telling me this Perbix guy, he's 27 years old, and he's a young 27. He's a right-handed defenseman. Those don't grow on trees. And the Predators were able to get him for just 2 years and $2.75 million per season. Something must be wrong with him. What was the market on Nick Perbix in free agency?
The thing I would say to Jared is that, points in this league get you paid, right? Points or winning. Like, the thing about Nick Hague is that Nick Hague has been an important piece on a winning team. Look, like, I saw the reaction to Nick Hague's contract the other day, and everybody can feel what they want. I don't have any problem with that. Nick Hague was getting that from somewhere. He was getting, like, if you wanted to be in the market on this player, that it was going to cost you that. And time will tell. But I think Nick Hague's a really good player. I think he's competitive. I think he's a bit of a firebrand. Like, I saw him in a lot of big series where he played well. Now, the one thing that's going to happen here in Nashville is he's going to be asked to play a bigger role. So, he'll have to deliver, but he's definitely got the talent to do that. The thing to me with Perbix is, the reason I wasn't surprised about that contract, Adam, is that there's not, as you said, he's a young 27. He doesn't have a long resume, right? Like, he wasn't with the Lightning when they were winning Stanley Cups. He's never really been asked to play a bigger role, but he's a solid player. Like, he's a guy who's you can plug him in at certain minutes. He's a right-hand shot, and he's not going to hurt you. He's going to play solidly, unspectacularly, but he's not your best guy, and he'll fill a role. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good signing. I know, when you have a run that didn't work as well as Nashville's did, everybody likes to look and say, okay, what's the catch? There's no catch with this guy. He's just not going to lead your team in scoring.
We talk with Elliot Freeman, 32 Thoughts podcast. Now, Elliot, the Nashville Predators, as you know, spent the 5th pick on Brady Martin. Now, before the draft, there had been a lot of talk of them potentially drafting Martone or Hagens, but they go with Martin. What do you know what went into them drafting a guy like Brady Martin instead of a guy that is known to score goals in Hagens and a big guy in Martone?
So, like, I was pretty familiar with this Brady Martin story, Derek. Like, I was invited to go spend the night at the farm the night he was drafted, but I was going to the draft itself, so I couldn't go. I followed this one quite a bit, and Derek, the interesting thing about it is when you look at his numbers or you look at his resume, you might not look at it and say, okay, that's the top pick or a high pick. But as the playoffs went on and the Panthers kept winning, I had a couple people say to me, this is going to be very good for a guy like Brady Martin. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, people are going to be like, Brady Martin would be a great Florida Panther. He would fit beautifully on that Florida roster. And someone's going to look at that kid, say,
that's the kind of guy like a Sam Bennett, who you're never going to look at his point total and say, oh, well, he got 50 points. That's not very good. Like, what do you care about that? But instead, you're hoping that he has that kind of an impact. I'll give you another example. I don't think he'll be like a Brady Tkachuk. I think that's too high a ceiling for Brady Martin. But I remember when the year Brady Tkachuk was drafted, I think he had 8 goals in college hockey, and people ripped Ottawa for that pick. Even though he was a Tkachuk, he got ripped. They got ripped for that pick because he only had 8 goals his draft year. I think what people see in Martin is that he can be a player who maybe doesn't get a lot of points, but he's like Bennett in the sense that he impacts you with his physicality, his will to do things in a game that make an impact. That's what people who saw the prospects felt as they watched the playoffs, that he's going to be a kind of guy who's never going to lead you in scoring, but he will drag you into the fight. And if that's the case, he'll turn out to be a great pick.
Now, the Predators are weak at the center position. I understand. I know they went out and made some moves, but they're still weak at that center position. Is there a guy that they can identify? And I know that the free agency pool isn't deep, especially at that position. But is there a guy that they can target at potentially during the trade deadline?
I'll tell you this, Derek. It's like the really challenging thing with that right now is that there's 25 teams looking for centers. Mm-hmm. It is really hard right now. Like Christian Dvorak, who signed a 1-year $5.4 million deal with Philly yesterday. Like, you wouldn't believe how many teams were going at that guy. It's so hard to find centers right now. There's so limited stock available, especially good ones. We'll see how next year unfolds, Derek, and who becomes available. But right now, the problem is everybody's looking for the same thing. Everybody.
Elliot, before we let you go, you reported several days ago as the Mitch Marner Vegas Golden Knights sign and trade was coming into focus that the Maple Leafs might go after the Golden Knights for tampering with Marner. Now that deal has been done, are you expecting any of that to come out of this?
You know what, Adam? I got from the Leafs, I think that, but it was, someone called me after I talked about it on the pod, and they said that one of the things that happened was with the Maple Leafs was when they signed John Tavares, there was a brief investigation by the league. And Lou Lamoriello, who was the GM of the Islanders at that time, he called the Leafs and said, I didn't ask for this. As a matter of fact, when I wrote that the Islanders had the Leafs investigated for tampering, literally 10 minutes after that article was published, I got a call from Lou Lamoriello saying, you have incorrect information. But by the way, that's a terrifying call.
I have to imagine so.
It was the league that did it. And, I'll say this, like, normally, Adam, as you know from doing this, once noon hits on July 1st, it's a flood of deals. They trickled in yesterday. They took a time. So I think everybody is sensitive to it. Everybody recognizes it's a thing, but I don't expect Toronto to complain. No.
Now, Elliot, before we get you out of here, majority of the GMs voted to have the draft the way it was this past year. Do you think because of what they saw, and I watched the draft, at least the first round, because I wanted to see who the Predators were going to draft. And honestly, Elliot, it was hard to watch majority of the time. So do you think the league goes back and say, hey, listen, we tried it 1 year. Now we're going back to the way we had it in previous years?
Yeah, I think that's going to happen, honestly, Derek. And, I'll tell you, Derek, there's the great conspiracy theory that in the last little bit, Bettman, the commissioner, he's been very careful to mention that changing the draft this year was not his idea. It was the GM's idea. And the GM, one of the GMs told me they're now convinced that Bettman like sabotaged it. And now the GMs, if they ask for anything, Bettman's going to say to them, the last time I listened to you guys with anything, look what happened. So they're all convinced not only is the draft going back to the old way, but the GMs are never going to get to do anything ever again.
Tinfoil hats. I love it.
Yeah.
Elliot Freeman, Sportsnet NHL insider, joining us on the program. Elliot, thank you for all of your excellent insight this season. Willie, Derek, and I look forward to this conversation every week. Enjoy your well-deserved break, and we will talk in the fall.
All right, guys. Speaking of fall, Derek and Adam, have a great summer. Let Willie know. Have a great summer, and also a great summer to all the great hockey fans of Nashville. I know there's a lot of you, and we love you.
Thank you, Elliot. Elliot Freeman joining us on the program for the final time this season. Look forward to those conversations.
Love having Elliot on
every Thursday. There isn't a person in the hockey world who is more connected, more plugged in than Elliot Freeman. And it's a pleasure to have him on our program. It's been a few years now. It predates my time on the program, but Elliot Freeman, presented by Old National Bank. Get old. We will catch up with Elliot in the fall. He gets a well-deserved break after all of the hard work he puts in during the hockey season.
Cottage-ish.
Yes.
That's
He
what it's
does not
called.
own a cottage, but you know, a lot of the Canadians now, they're at their cottages on some lake somewhere, kicking their feet up, and Elliot deserves a break. He does outstanding work. 615-737-1025. We will react to what Elliot had to say there. A lot of interesting news and notes, not just about the Predators, but the NHL as a whole. We'll also take your reaction as well at 615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. Okay.
Heroes in a half shell.
Okay, Atherton Portland, you are correct. It is heroes in a half shell, not turtles in a half shell.
Oh,
Now I'm hungry
man.
for some pizza.
Oh yeah.
The turtles, they love themselves some pizza. So when you did you play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with your friends?
Absolutely.
So were you Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo,
Man.
Raphael? Who were you?
Well, I played the video when you played the video. I
The
played
arcade
first,
game.
No, I'm not talking about. I know what you're talking about. But I played the original one where you went on a solo mission by yourself. You didn't have your
Ooh.
friends. You have to go underground. Has to, come from underneath the sewage, and you had your little van that you were driving around. And what was her name? What was the lady's
April
name?
O'Neil.
April O'Neil was
Yep.
driving you around. And
Master Splinter, and then Shredder.
Then Shredder.
Yeah.
And what was the guy named with the hockey mask? Not Jason. No. What was his name with the hockey mask? Gosh, I forget his name. But he became more of a fixture later on down the line.
Not Bebop and Rocksteady.
No, Bebop and Rocksteady was always there.
Casey Jones.
Yes, that's who it was. Casey Jones.
It's a good show. Good show.
That sounds like
We had a lot of reaction to the cartoons thing. Maybe we can run through those in a little bit. But another great conversation with Elliot Freeman, our final conversation with Elliot until hockey season approaches in September. But we did have a texter earlier. I believe it was Joel and Woodbury.
Mm-hmm.
He said he had a theory on the Nick Hague trade, and that so many people wanted Nick Hague that the Predators had to up the ante a little bit. And it sounded like that's what happened. Yeah. And Nick Hague signed a 4-year contract with the Predators. Elliot made it sound like he wasn't willing to do that with other teams that were interested in acquiring him. I still don't love the contract. I'm not going to excuse that. I still think it's an overpayment. But it all comes down to how Nick Hague performs.
Yes.
For as critical as I've been of this contract, Nick Hague has played in a lot of meaningful NHL games, a lot of playoff games with the Vegas Golden Knights. So that is an advantage that he brings. So again, I still don't love the contract, and I will need to be proven wrong by Nick Hague that he is worth that contract. But I am open-minded. Nick Hague, let me see. He's averaged 17 minutes and 13 seconds of ice time over 44 career playoff games. So again, don't love the contract. I'm willing to give it a shot. I have an open mind.
Well, he's here. Your mind gonna have to be open.
4 people texted in. 4 people. I want to give a credit to Joey from Bellevue, Wes and Hermitage, Michael and Madison, and Todd. All texted in Casey Jones, one right after the other.
Casey Jones.
They all texted in at 1:26 p.m. So it was a coordinated effort to let Derek know about Casey Jones.
And we thank you for that.
Yes, that's why we love our listeners. I'm looking for this text. Jeff texted in earlier when I was going through my lineup, which was woof. One texter, Jeff, said, the Predators continuing to rely on Ryan O'Reilly to play above line 2 is less than ideal. They need a rookie to rise up or look at one of those teams above the cap to take advantage of. So when the Predators signed Ryan O'Reilly and he was their first line center 2 years ago, I said, okay, that's fine for this season. But 2 years from now, probably shouldn't be playing first line center. But that's how it's probably going to be because frankly, the Predators don't have anybody else who can play first-line center right now. And Ryan O'Reilly, still a reliable player in every situation. 5-on-5, power play, penalty kill, short, 5-on, killing off an empty net, 5-on-6, 6-on-5, whatever you want to call it. Still a reliable player in all of those situations, but a low-end first-line center at this stage of his career. But again, for those of you who missed it, here was my projected Predators lineup post free agency. You tell me what you think. Forsberg, O'Reilly, Marchessault, Stamkos, Svechkov, Evangelista, Bunting, Halla, and either Wood or Kemmel or another young right winger on the third line. Smith, McCarron, and LaRue. On defense, Hague and Yossi, Shea and Perbix, Molendyke and Barron, and of course, UC Saros and goal. To me, as I said earlier, Derek, that's not even a bubble team in my eyes. That's whatever the step below a bubble team is. That's what the Predators' ceiling is based on that roster on paper on July 2nd.
What if okay, and I get a lot of it. You are basing on what happened in the previous year,
Mm-hmm.
and then you add what 2 or 3 new guys to this equation. I think it's 2. Is it 2 or 3? 2 to the equation. But can't we also say that if these Yossi's back fully healthy, I think that's the big question mark. We pray that he is, but Yossi's back fully healthy, doesn't show any effects of, POTS. So he's back on. Stamkos, Shea, and Marchessault. More importantly, Marchessault and Stamkos. Shea, he needs to up his game as well. But most important, those two guys. If those two guys play closer to what we thought they should have played last year, with your line, can't you don't envision this team as a playoff team? And I know a lot of it is predicated on those free agents from last year to really kick into gear this year.
I certainly have more confidence in their ability to defend, but again, that's sort of a low bar to clear.
Okay.
Say what you will about Nick Hagan, Nick Perbix, they are NHL defensemen.
Mhm.
Nick Blankenberg, who played 60 games last season, and good for him, should not be playing 60 games in the NHL. I believe he's 27 years old, and he played more games last season than he had played in any other point of his career combined. I think he had 55 games of NHL experience as a 27-year-old entering last season, and he played 60 games this past season. So, no disrespect to Nick Blankenberg, who, again, was a great story, but and by the end, with so many people injured, Yossi was out and Shen was traded. They were, I think Barry Trotz said yesterday that they were basically fielding a defense core of Brady Shea and a bunch of minor leaguers. He may not have said it so plainly, but that's basically what he said. So again, this is when the NHL flips into off-season mode. It's possible the Predators make more moves between now and the start of training camp. But the roster we have in front of us now is probably going to be the roster that reports to training camp in 2+ months. And right now, I don't have a lot of high hopes for this team. We will continue to monitor anything that happens, of course. But the roster we have right now is probably going to be the roster that the Predators enter training camp with. I want to give you a chance to respond to something. We talked about it with Jonathan Hutton. So Sophie Cunningham of the Indiana Fever, the WNBA is expanding to Detroit, Cleveland, and Philadelphia, correct? And Sophie Cunningham did an interview after shoot-around yesterday where she basically said, shouldn't you be consulting with the players on this? And she said, quote, I don't know how excited people are to be going to Detroit or Cleveland. Now, I've got a proud Michigander sitting to my right. The city of Detroit responded to Sophie Cunningham.
Yeah, they should have.
She said, or they said, quote, the city didn't do it. Somebody did it on behalf of the city. The City of Detroit Twitter account said, quote, the last time we were home to a WNBA team, the Detroit Shock, we ranked top 5 in attendance for 5 straight seasons, number 1 in attendance for 3 straight seasons, and set a single game attendance record of 22,076 fans at Game 3 of the 2003 WNBA Finals. Additionally, more than 775,000 people were excited to come to Detroit for the 2024 NFL Draft. Detroit is a sports town. We're sure we'll see the same excitement for the WNBA returning.
Again, maybe, and I could be completely wrong on this, she hasn't spent a day in Detroit or any significant time in Detroit, especially over the last 10 years, and the city has grown, where they put all the sports franchises right downtown. Again, you're not helping your sport when you say stuff like that. You know that, right? And hopefully somebody's telling her that, because listen, the WNBA has been around for a while, but listen, wasn't nobody watching it. The talent has gotten a lot better, and obviously Caitlin Clark leads the charge as far as the new guards in the WNBA. But listen, don't act as if this sport is just thriving, and we have, we're thriving so much that we can pick our places, and no, you're not at that point yet, And when you say things like this, you hurt your sport. Like the Detroit Shock, they sent out their message saying, and that's why you need to do your homework on certain things, especially when it's pertaining to your league.
I want to say the Shock won 3 WNBA titles.
Exactly. So, and I understand what some of the players, what she may have heard from some of the new players or whatnot, but that team won 3 championships. They just list all the things that they were, tops in. Top 5 in attendance, set an attendance record, number 1 over 3 seasons straight of attendance. They've won championships. Why wouldn't you want to bring? Yes, it didn't work ultimately in the end, but women's basketball is in a better place now. I'm sure that teams would rather join the WNBA now rather than back then, because it was hard to survive, because not many people were watching it and they didn't want to invest in it like that. But now they have. So Detroit would be a wonderful place, I think, for a WNBA team with their brother sitting on the other side of the Detroit Pistons, because I'm sure they will play in the same arena that the Pistons
I
play
imagine they'll play at Little Caesars Arena.
Exactly.
Which
So it's
is,
like right there.
Right. It's right down the street from Comerica Park.
Yeah,
I
they're
think
all in that area.
and
the Red Wings, everything.
Right. This is not Joe Louis Arena. They're not playing at the Palace.
No. Mm-mm.
And I've only been to Detroit a few times for work. Like, I haven't spent leisurely time in Detroit. My wife was raised in suburban Detroit, so I know she's a proud Michigander as well. But because my father-in-law worked for Ford. But my experience in Detroit has always been pleasant. I know that this was a hot topic a few weeks ago when Stephen A. Smith was bringing up the stuff about Memphis. And, I have no opinion on that because I've never been to Memphis. But I do think that people have a negative opinion on the city of Detroit that may be outdated.
She probably never spent any quality time in the city of Detroit. And for you, with a sport that is trying to grow, for you to sort of badmouth the city which your sport is putting a team in, it's going to be a red target on your ass. Best believe. I'm just saying, like, seriously, it's good. When I mean that, when that team ever comes in and you're still in the league, when you play the Detroit Shock,
remember.
They will remember.
They will remember.
Be on, regardless of what team you're playing for, the Indiana Fever or any team. Just so happen you might get traded to Detroit.
Ooh, wouldn't that be something?
That'd be ironic, wouldn't it?
That would be incredible.
I want that to happen. I do want that to happen. I want her to get traded to Detroit when they, roll out the team there in the Motor City.
I don't know if they have it. I imagine they have an expansion draft in the WNBA. It would be hilarious if Sophie Cunningham was the choice for the Detroit team. But we shall see. I wanted to give the proud Detroit native an opportunity to respond. Gino on our text line about our cartoon conversation said, before school, cartoons were all Looney Tunes for me. After school was DuckTales, Goof Troop, Rescue Rangers. Didn't care for when they added
about Rescue Rangers.
Didn't care for when they added Darkwing Duck. What's wrong with Darkwing Duck?
Darkwing Duck was, oh my goodness.
Let's get dangerous.
What's wrong with Darkwing Duck? Back memories, man. With that whole list he just said.
I love Goof Troop, man. Report to the Goof Troop. Bop-a-da-bop, bop-a-doo-bop. Yeah.
Man, you're taking me back, man. Thank y'all. I appreciate that.
615-737-1025. Speaking of goofs, Jared Stillman will join us. Great
segue.
Yes,
that was awesome.
Jared Stillman will join us to wrap up the show next. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, Stillman and Company. Coming up in about 15 minutes, but as usual, we bring in Jared Stillman a little bit early as we transition from our show to his. So, Jared, I know you did the same exercise yesterday. Robbie Stanley did this exercise. I did this exercise putting together our projected Predators lineups for next season. More or less, they're the same. And I look at it on paper and I say, yikes, this is not a great team. What does your projected lineup say to you about the 2025-2026 Nashville Predators?
My projected lineup says I absolutely raked your game of who plays where over the coals yesterday.
That wasn't all me.
program.
Jake did solicit some from me, but I was very impressed. I don't think I've ever questioned your hockey knowledge and said, you don't know what you're talking about.
I think you've thought it, though. I think you've thought it.
There have been times I have thought it, yes, but I was very impressed.
All right, give us me and Derek one. Let's see if Derek can do this as well.
Okay. Oh man, you're putting me on the spot here.
I am.
All right, let's see. I will choose. This is great radio. I will choose Matt Zuccarello.
Minnesota.
That is correct.
Minnesota.
You said it after the fact.
Let me say this on
Yes.
the lines as far as we're all concerned here. I mean, it does really feel like Barry Trotz's plan is to do the exact same thing they did last year and just hope it goes different this year. I mean, that's really what they're doing. That's what it feels like. You know, again, not to disrespect your favorite player, Nick Perbix or Nick Hague or whatever, but to me, that's all swap and spit. You know, Carrier and Fabro and Lazan are gone, and these guys are in.
I mean, I feel better about Perbix than I do about Nick Blankenberg playing 60 games.
But again, to me, that's all again, swap and spit based off of what they had last year. Trying Fedor Svechkov at the second line center. Let's see if he can do it. That to me is the same as let's see if Tommy Novak can do it. They're doing the same thing. And what I find to be crazy is Trotz yesterday at the podium was talking about, hey, you know, we got to play defense first. Defense wins in the league. Watch the Florida Panthers. They play defense. And we all know what Barry Trotz was as the coach here of the Predators. It was let's play defense and try to poke a goal in, you know, here, there, whatever. But what the Florida Panthers did when they decided they wanted to be a defensive team like that was they fired Andrew Burnett. And Barry Trotz is keeping Andrew Burnett, so he's keeping the same coach. He's keeping the same core of players. And unless Brady Martin plays on this team and is a superstar from the jump, I don't really see a difference between last year's team and this year's team. And last year's team lost 50 games. So I don't know what to tell you guys.
If it were up to you, would Brady Martin be on the Predators opening night roster?
Yes. I would have Brady Martin up for the first 10 games and then go from there. Or first 9 games or whatever the rule is. I'd have Brady Martin up for the first handful of games. I'd take him overseas with me and go from there. And if he needs to go back to juniors, then he goes back to juniors. And Barry Trotz comes on this program and says, hey, look, you know, we wanted to give it a try. We wanted him to travel with the team overseas. No harm, no foul. He goes back to juniors. We'll see him next year. That would be kind of how I would play it. At the same time, the one I do wonder about is Mullendijk. You know, does Mullendijk come up with the big club next year or not? Or do you want him to play down at Milwaukee with Andrew Gibson and play first pair minutes? Because the way they talk about Mullendijk and Gibson is they view them as kind of the I'm trying to be respectful with what I'm about to say. The Weber and Suter of the future, I think, is kind of how they view him and Andrew Gibson. So, you know, do you want them playing together at Milwaukee and playing first pair minutes and first penalty kill and on the power play so that when they come up to the NHL, they'll have that experience? That I also think is a pretty important question too, as far as who starts the year on the team. If you're trying to win, like if you are dedicated to winning next season, if that's the top goal is to bring the joy back, I think Brady Martin's the second best center on this team right now. And I think Tanner Mullendijk's one of the 6 best defensemen.
So, Jared, you like to say this to us, so we're going to say this with you say this to you. Somebody on this program has a bone to pick with you, That would be one Derek Mason. Derek, take it away.
It's a grievance. This is a small grievance.
A minor
Yeah,
grievance.
just a minor.
What in the world
a
could
grievance.
Derek Mason be upset with me about?
I'm never really upset with you, but I do got a small grievance here. You and Caitlin Clark, okay? I think you are in sort of I think you're taking it just a tad bit too far. I think you're sort of, taking this thing a little bit where it shouldn't go as far as, listen, the young lady has only played woman, young lady, woman. She's much younger than me. She's only played 9 games. 9 of the what, Jared? 16 games this season, going on 17 before.
Sorry, haven't been
18.
keeping up with
I know,
the WNBA
and
stats,
absolutely,
Derek.
and that is why I have a grievance to pick with you, because you haven't been keeping up with it, but you are in this mode of, because she wasn't named a top getter in the players voting for
She was
All-Star.
9th.
How many games has she played? 9. Her shooting has gotten worse. Her 3-pointers have gotten worse, all while taking the same amount of 3-pointers in a game, which is 8. She took 8 last year. She's taking 8 this year. She went from 35% to below 30%. I think she's at 29% now. So she's not having a good season. And part
So
of it
you don't
is-
think she should be an All-Star?
No. That's not
You
what
don't
I'm
think
saying.
she should start?
No, she shouldn't. She should, and that's not because,
Even though it's the
Listen,
All-Star game and
you're
she's
not-
the
you're-
only star
you're not hearing.
that league
You're not
has.
hearing what I'm saying. If it's just based on the games and the production, no, I'm not saying she doesn't deserve to be on the All-Star team. She does.
So help me understand something quickly. The voting is done by players and media and fans. It's a combination.
It's just like the NBA does it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same way.
So the
Fans
players,
and
so
then
Jared, the
players.
players had Caitlin Clark way far down the
They
list.
had her 9th,
Okay.
but she's still a starter.
I had a long discussion about this with Yahoo
Mm-hmm.
Sports WNBA host Caroline Fenton.
Of course.
And she thought that, in just being totally fair
Mm-hmm.
and balanced, that Caitlin Clark should have been 3rd or 4th in the voting for guards.
I
Not
don't-
9th.
Again,
You
I
know as
don't-
well as I do, they're jealous of her, Derek.
I
You
wouldn't
know
say-
it.
Again, I'm not gonna say, because I'm not in those rooms. I'm
Oh,
not those women.
Derek.
I don't think
Derek
I don't
Mason.
think they're jealous of. I cannot paint everybody with the same brush, so I'm not gonna sit there and say they are jealous, which tells me her teammates are
Derek
jealous. Or do you hold on?
Mason
Do you
the
think her
first.
teammates are jealous of her? Because you say all the girls are jealous of her. Do you think her teammates are jealous of her?
Not Sophie Cunningham.
You think so? So you think everybody else on her team is jealous?
By
of
the
her?
way, if you got a bone to pick with me, how do you feel about Sophie Cunningham?
Oh,
We just discussed this
discussed
before
that.
before
she
you
needs
came
to just
on.
sit down because of sport. How can again? How do you? And you switched me over now, Jared. You did it on purpose.
She
You did it
trashed
on
the joint,
purpose.
and I
Yes,
know
you did
have
it
a
on
bone to pick with
purpose.
that.
You did it on purpose.
Mr. WNBA.
But no.
Also, speaking of which, Derek,
Yes.
you need to take this up with Caroline today.
Okay.
She was ripping the Milwaukee Bucks today, ripping them for waiving Damian Lillard. When
He's hurt.
That's what I kept trying to say. I
He's
said
hurt.
this was the only thing they could do to try to win the East. And she's like, but they're spending all this money. I'm like, they were spending that money anyways. It's lost money. You can't get
Yes.
it back.
He tore. What did he do? Tear his
Achilles.
Achilles. Oh yeah,
Lillard was an Achilles injury.
He's
Yeah.
not going to be back more than likely till the middle of the season.
Well, and think about this too. And again, I want you to have this conversation with Caroline. When it comes to the Eastern Conference, because I said to Caroline, I go, if Milwaukee wins the East next year, can Giannis request a trade? And she said no. Like, if you get to the NBA Finals and then you request a trade, you're a loser.
Yeah, you can't.
So we agree with that. And I said, okay, well, then why would you not go for it this year? And she was like, well, I don't think they're better than Cleveland. I'm like, Cleveland?
Yeah.
Cleveland?
Okay, let me look at this. I don't think they're better than Boston.
Well, Tatum's hurt.
Tatum's hurt. Yeah, that's another.
Tatum and Halliburton, to me, are hurt, so Boston and Indiana are out.
The Knicks are still a good team.
Don't have a coach.
They
have one now.
Yes,
Got one. They have Mike Brown.
Mike Brown is their coach now.
Is Don Staley not that didn't work out?
The Indiana Pacers are still there. They're not going anywhere. The Detroit
Well, the
Pacers have gotten better.
Pacers
When
don't
are
have
they interviewing
Halliburton.
Gino?
Huh?
When are they interviewing Gino? The Knicks.
I don't know. But you got the Pistons. You have other teams outside of the few teams that were named after Milwaukee. Milwaukee know they're in a position right now that they're not winning a championship. They're not, especially not this year. They're trying to find, and Giannis is trying to find a way to get out of there because he knows the East is getting stronger, and
But
he has to get out.
get there though. They can get to the
But
finals.
and nobody can with a healthy, even though Tatum will not be back. If he is, it's probably the last half of the season. But you still got Philly, you still got the Knicks,
Philly.
You still got Cleveland, you got the Pistons who are getting
Cleveland's
better.
legit.
Indiana, they're good.
Orlando. No, Indiana's out. Halliburton's hurt.
Gosh, you're right, man. You're right. I didn't even think about the Halliburton's injury. So you got two players on marquee teams that are injured, and more than likely will not be ready.
To me, it's Cleveland and the Knicks, and
Yeah.
I think it's a toss-up between Milwaukee and those three teams, and then maybe like a Detroit or an Orlando. Sneaks in there
Orlando,
a
I
little bit.
think, could end up being a problem for Milwaukee if Giannis is gone, which I'm not
talking about with Giannis on the team.
Oh,
this
with
year.
Giannis.
Yeah, he's
man.
going to be on the team this year. My
They
thing with
they-
Caroline was, I didn't think that Milwaukee had anything to lose by doing this, because if Giannis wants to leave after this year, if they don't get to the finals, then they'll set themselves up for a rebuild by trading Giannis and Miles Turner. And then when the Lillard cap hits are still hitting them over the years, they'll be bad anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Derek, you just uttered three of the most dangerous words in the English language. You're right, Jared.
Thank you.
That'll do it for
Did
us.
I say that?
You said you're right. I added the Jared.
Okay, there you go.
That'll do it for us today. Of course, Stillman and Company coming up next. Derek, enjoy your long weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. I and Connor Newt will talk to you tomorrow at 11 o'clock.
Be love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, wonderful day and 4th of July. And hug and love and kiss on the people that's in your circle, people. Okay? So enjoy, be blessed, take care. See ya.